In a total plot twist, I'm actually looking forward to tax season because it's the first time I have Monarch. I love Monarch because it helps me see where my money is going instead of looking back and wondering where the heck it all went. Whatever happens with the IRS this year, Monarch is here to show me where my money is going and where a possible tax refund would have the biggest impact. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop. Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code OFFTHECLOCK. In the therapy room, I'm all about helping clients make decisions that actually lead to meaningful change. Monarch does this by giving me a complete financial picture so that my financial decisions are informed by real data. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple. Use code OFFTHECLOCK at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code OFFTHECLOCK.
The standard signs for when we are overwhelmed or when generally something is not working in a sustainable way for us is we notice disruptions in sleep. We notice disruptions in eating. We notice real mood changes. We notice that we feel we're not acting like ourselves. And then if we think specifically about when we add in kind of the facet of maybe burnout, that can also look like the things that kept you hopeful, happy, inspired, feel like they no longer work.
That was Kerry Makin-Byrd on Psychologists Off the Clock.
We are 5 experts in psychology here to bring you cutting-edge and science-based ideas to help you flourish in your relationships, work, and health.
I'm Dr. Debbie Sorensen, a clinical psychologist practicing in Mile High, Denver, Colorado, author of Act for Burnout and Act Daily Journal.
From America's Heartland, I'm Dr. Emily Edlin, a clinical psychologist based in Chicago, Illinois, and author of Autonomy Supportive Parenting.
Calling in from Vienna, Austria, I'm Michael Herold, ACT coach, confidence trainer, and the author of an upcoming book on developing your confidence and social skills.
From Boston, I'm Dr. Yael Schoenbrunn, faculty at Brown University and author of Work, Parent, Thrive and an upcoming book about misunderstanding.
And from coastal New England, I'm Dr. Jill Stoddard, author of Be Mighty, The Big Book of ACT Metaphors, and Imposter No More.
We hope you take what you learn here to build a rich and meaningful life.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock.
Hey listeners, just a super quick reminder that you can listen to the podcast ad-free by supporting us on Patreon for just $5 a month. Or you can support the podcast with a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you to everyone who's already supporting us. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode for our co-host discussion of today's interview. Dr. Kerry Makin-Byrd is a clinical psychologist and noted burnout and well-being expert who translates science into practical nonfiction. An alum of Penn State, UC San Francisco, and the Palo Alto VA healthcare system, a Stanford School of Medicine affiliate, she was honored with the Veterans Health Administration's Special Contribution Award for nationally impactful policy work and clinical teaching. A burnout survivor herself, Dr. Kerry is the author of the memoir, The Ballad of Burnout. Based in Wellington, New Zealand, she divides her time between writing, providing trauma therapy, and mentoring doctors and therapists. Her favorite types of rest are cold swims with her family and cackling with her friends. Kerry's also a friend of mine and a long-term colleague, and she's been on the podcast before. About 6 years ago, she came on to talk about burnout and stress that healthcare professionals were experiencing back during COVID. That was episode 154, if anyone wants to listen to that.
Wow.
Welcome back, Kerry. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to talking today about your new book, which is called Start Here, A Practical Guide for the Overwhelmed. So congratulations on the book, and so glad that you're back. I think a lot of us are feeling overwhelmed these days, Kerry, so we're glad to have you here.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. It's really striking that 6 years ago we were talking about burnout and overwhelm with medical professionals, and my guess is for you and I, and for many people listening, so much has happened in those 6 years. And the good news is we have a lot more science and learning and writing about how to support people. And it is an overwhelming time.
It is. You know what, Kerry, I was actually just telling someone recently, my burnout book came out a couple years ago, Act for Burnout.
Yeah.
And I actually thought, I think people are getting a little less burnout. Like maybe this book is going to be unnecessary by the time it's actually released into the world. Like maybe burnout will sort of be dwindling down a little and it's too late. And unfortunately, that's definitely not the case. I mean, yeah, I was wrong when I thought that. We're all pretty much exhausted.
Similarly, I heard an interview a few years ago with, I think it was people in the publishing industry, and there was some wondering whether, have we kind of flooded the market with burnout books? There's not really any more interest in. And just as my experience as a reader, continuing to feel incredibly grateful for the variety of books that are coming out. And I think one of the places that I feel like there has been a real step change in accessibility is illustrated options and graphic novel options. And one of Sharon Salzberg's most recent books is this beautiful, incredibly accessible, and it's very short essays and quotes. And it's one of my favorite recent books for when you feel overwhelmed or burnout. And I recommend it to a lot of providers that I work with, because when you're overwhelmed and when your time is so stretched, many of us do not have either attentional capacity or just time in the day to sit down and read something for a few hours. But having kind of materials where we can dip in and out, at least I have found to be really useful in my own kind of continued growing and like self-soothing through really challenging times.
Well, that was a perfect segue, because I wanted to start out there, right? In your book, you give an example of a time you yourself were overwhelmed, and you write about this in the book. You have the thought, I need a manual for this. Like you wanted something really simple, clear, just like, okay, what do I do? Step by step, like how do I navigate this overwhelm? And so you wrote one, and your book has illustrations and it brings in the science and really great skills, but in this very straightforward, to the point format. So why did you think that format was an important one for this book of yours?
Well, like you said, the impetus really began with two things being true at the same time. Me being at a moment in my own life where I was incredibly overwhelmed and my heart was beating really fast. My mind was racing. I was waking up during the night, fruitlessly going through all the problems I thought I needed to solve. And on an intellectual level, we happen to be clinical psychologists. We actually have a lot of training on how to support other people and ourselves when we feel overwhelmed. And the reality is, when I was overwhelmed, it felt incredibly hard to access any of that information that I needed. And I have this clear memory, and I think I mentioned it in the book, of laying awake at night and thinking, I have 8 meditation apps on my phone, and all I want is someone to hand me a piece of paper with do this, then do this, then do this. And as kind of black and white and clear and simple as possible, because that's really what I needed then. And so the book, Start Here, A Practical Guide for the Overwhelmed, I describe as it's a cookbook. It is a cookbook with a few recipes in 3 core kind of suggested skills: soothe ourselves, transcend the present moment, and then when you're ready, move forward. So that it maybe is a long answer to, Kerry, why? The short answer is, Oh, because I needed it, and I knew science had some useful answers that my hope was to say very simply and concretely in a way that was useful for myself and others.
That's so true that even as psychologists, we might know this. We help our clients with it. We read books about it. We have studied this in great detail. And yet when we're in a moment of we're dealing with a problem in our own lives, or we ourselves are stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, whatever the case may be, to be able to clearly access that is very difficult.
And one of the things that you and I have kind of chatted about is that one of the things that differentiates Start Here is there are these beautiful illustrations done by Catherine Hall throughout the book. And I am not an illustrator. I'm not someone who draws or sketches. And I also find that the amount of information that can be kind of quickly communicated through a simple image, that my hope is that readers, long after they are done with the book, if it's useful, have little copies of the images and can either flash it in their mind, or for book events that I do in person, we actually make stickers of a bunch of the illustrations. And I've heard more than one person say, oh my goodness, I just put this sticker on my notebook, or I put it on my laptop. And when I start to feel myself get kind of stressed out, I just look at the sticker, and it's this reminder of, oh, okay, here's the 3 steps of self-compassion, for example, on a little sticker, person climbing up a rock face.
Oh, that's such a great idea, because I think that image, it like cuts through the words and has that instant.
Yes.
And they really are beautiful illustrations. And so, you see this one image and it's like, that image will soothe you. So it's a great idea. You could put it on your water bottle or whatever.
I think this is one of those things that I have been most inspired by in the kind of cultural discourse during moments of real grief and hardship in the last 6 months, both kind of locally and internationally. One of the cultural narratives that I find so grounding and helpful is we all have the opportunity to use our skills to do something that is helpful to the world. And that means especially for the artists, for the drawers, for the people who can put words to part of what is happening, there's just space for all of it. And as someone who doesn't draw, knowing the comfort that I have received by looking at these pictures, and Catherine Adam is the woman who designed this book. But I have to say, having seen her work around, it has given me such an appreciation for designers generally who are, we can write words, we can say words, but being able to structure that information in a way that's really accessible and clear, what a superpower.
I love that. I mean, we've been talking a lot on the podcast lately about creativity and art and the importance of what that does for our well-being. And I think that's a great example of that. Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk more about overwhelm. So I think we all probably have a sense of that, right? I mean, who hasn't felt overwhelmed? I'm sure we all have, and we know what that means. We have an intuitive sense of it. But I want to unpack it a little bit more just to be more clear on what we're talking about and what's going on there. Like, what is overwhelm? And so, Kerry, what are some of the signs that you're experiencing overwhelm, and what's going on there? Why do we get overwhelmed, and what's happening?
So the standard signs for when we are overwhelmed, or when generally something is not working in a sustainable way for us, is we notice disruptions in sleep. We notice disruptions in eating. We notice real mood changes. We notice that we feel we're not acting like ourselves. And then if we think specifically about when we add in kind of the facet of maybe burnout, that can also look like the things that kept you hopeful, happy, inspired, feel like they no longer work. You don't feel touched in the same way. Sometimes it feels like your emotions are actually are either stampeding over you or like they're turned off. Things can feel incredibly distant. Like some people will describe feeling really overwhelmed or burned out as really questioning whether they have an impact on the world, either in their work or family life. And it feels almost like the kind of care or aliveness feels pretty drained out. Overwhelm looks a little bit different for everybody. Those are kind of a range of experiences. Another way that I like to describe it, in a moment you feel overwhelmed. Broadly in the trauma literature, we would describe it as outside of your window of tolerance. So physiologically, you are either very over aroused or very under aroused and are no longer able to simultaneously feel and think at the same time. So when we are, I have been jokingly using the phrase whelmed. When we are kind of whelmed, or when we're in a kind of middle stance, we both can access our heart and our emotions while being able to access the thoughts in the kind of logical sense. And we can hold both those things and then choose how we'd like to move forward. That's kind of the optimal or ideal state that most of us enjoy. It feels really nice when you're in a kind of middle regulated place. And overwhelm, air quotes, is usually when we are on an extreme that is either really amped up or sometimes for some people, their experience of overwhelm is not a really hot feeling. So, for example, when Kerry is overwhelmed, I am kind of tuned up in frequency. My heart is beating really fast. Psychologically, it's a little bit like I'm vibrating. Like my family would say I'm buzzing around the house. And some of my loved ones, just the way that their personality is, when they are overwhelmed, they are much more likely to, like, I go to boiling point and they instead kind of, it's almost like they're frozen. There's this feeling of everything is much slower. They have a hard time finding words, while I, for better or worse, have lots and lots of words. Maybe not skillful words, but lots of words. And so sometimes that can be useful for understanding there's a range of ways that overwhelm looks, and B, it can be to one end of the extreme or the other.
Oh, that's helpful. And that's really interesting to think about how different people might experience it differently and how it might show up behaviorally. I noticed for myself that I really have trouble focusing. Like my mind is buzzing so much, I can't like make a decision or sit there and focus on something. It's like I'm scatterbrained a little bit. Is that a normal overwhelm response, would you say, Kerry?
And you have that feeling of, it's almost like tires slipping in mud. There's this there's a lot of energy, but it also feels really ineffective. Like you're just kind of like, what I want to try and catch everything all at the same time. Yes. I deeply feel that.
That resonates. Mm-hmm. That lands for me. It's like the wheels are spinning, like wild spinning. But they're wild. Not. It's going nowhere.
There's no movement. Exactly.
There's no traction. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is helpful. Okay. So that's overwhelm. And then, in your book, your approach, you mentioned already, you have these big steps, the 3 steps really broadly. These will be like the categories in your cookbook. The Soothe, Transcend, and Move. And we'll unpack those, a little bit later in the conversation. But you really recommend practicing, like trying some different ones, maybe trying all of them, see what works for you, practicing. Why is practice so important when it comes to these skills?
Yes. Well, anyone who is listening, who has learned how to walk or learn to drive or learn to ride a bike probably can answer that question of why is practice so important? Because humans, all of us, right? All animals, we learn by doing. And because each of these recipes are going to need a little bit of customization to what works for you. It is kind of a truism of psychology that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So we want to take elements of what you already know works for you when you're feeling overwhelmed, and then see, can we weave that with some evidence-based suggestions? And then when you practice, you not only build that neural network of getting stronger and accessing that skill set more quickly and with more efficiency, but you also naturally refine it over time. So it's a little like, we're using this metaphor of the cookbook. My family has a favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe. And the first time we made it, we did it just like the written out recipe says. And then the second time we knew, you actually are going to use, I know exactly which bowls I'm going to use. And I want to melt the butter before we start anything. And then now we've made this recipe at this point 24 times. And not only can I do it much more efficiently, like I can do it really quickly. I know all the steps in order, but I also know all the little adjustments that work more for me. And this is what humans do. If you think about the way you pack your bag in the morning to go to work, the first time you did it, you maybe forgot your keys or the cell phone was left in the kitchen. And by the 30th time you were doing it, you had more and more kind of refined idea of, I can do this quickly, I can do this seamlessly, and I can make sure I have my lunch and my coffee cup and, that piece of paper I need as well. So we just get better and stronger and faster at things as we do them more and more.
I love that example of making the cookies and how it gets easier, more streamlined the more times you do it. And you don't want to be making the chocolate chip cookies for the first time ever when you're in a big panic because you're about to walk out the door for a place where you told them you would bring, a party, and you said you'd bring the cookies. So similarly with this, I think you don't want to be, the first time I'm ever trying this exercise is when I'm in a complete panic of overwhelm.
Yeah,
right?
Debbie, that's such an important point, is that we know, and you see this with athletes will use this information or knowledge a lot when they will practice the way they want to show up for the sport over and over under rested, calm, regular conditions, because they want that muscle memory to be so well ingrained. So it's incredibly accessible when they are then under pressure.
Yes. That's exactly it. Under pressure, you need to be able to access this. And the more you do it throughout your day or throughout your life, the more easily you'll be able to access it when you are.
I notice that something that is true for me is when I start to feel nervous and put on the spot, my neck and shoulders will get tense. My shoulder bones will start to lift toward my ears, and I'll feel this knot in my stomach. And it used to be kind of, before I had a more dedicated kind of mindfulness practice, usually I would not even be aware that I was feeling stressed out until I could feel kind of pain shooting down my neck. And with a lot of practice, breathing, stretching my neck, stretching my shoulders, when I'm feeling calm, when there's no pressure, now something that I gotta say, I'm kind of shocked actually it works. I think if I had heard this 5 years ago on a podcast, I would think, oh, come on, really? Is this true? But at least in my own experience, now when I can actually feel my shoulders begin to creep up, like there's a little like bing that happens. And at that point, I can start, when I'm not all the time, but sometimes I can take this long, deep breath and actually roll my shoulders back. And that's the kind of subtle calming much earlier on in the stress process that I definitely could not do 5 years ago. And I think that is a benefit of practice as well.
Yes. And that awareness piece is part of it. You catch it earlier, then you make this shift, and a little shift really changes things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great example.
Here at Psychologists Off the Clock, we know that regular workouts are good for mental health. What the research conspicuously fails to address, however, is the outfit question. As in, does the psychological benefit hold if you're wearing sad, stretched-out leggings from 2016? Since the literature is silent on this, let's fill in the gap. Cute workout gear matters, which is where Fabletics comes in. Fabletics pieces feel like the kind of activewear you'd see with other high brands, but for a fraction of the price. What might be especially cool for many of our listeners is that the membership also gives you access to Fabletics scrubs. They just launched a collaboration with Nurse John, and if you work in healthcare or know somebody who does, new VIPs can get a full scrub set for just $15. The scrubs are made with durable, water-repellent fabrics, so spills just roll right off and feel far more breathable and flexible than premium scrubs without the premium price tag. Same activewear quality, just built for long days on your feet. Fabletics is one of the brands that once you try it, you get it. The value, the styles, the flexibility, that's the appeal of Fabletics. Fabletics already has incredible deals, and I've got an exclusive offer just for Psychologists Off the Clock listeners. Get 80% off everything when you sign up as a VIP. Just head to fabletics.com/POTC, take a quick style quiz, and be sure to select POTC when prompted to unlock your 80% off. That's fabletics.com/POTC.
Picture this. You scroll through social media and there it is, an ad for the action figure that your life has been missing all along. And the shopping odyssey starts. What's your login? What's your password? Wait, you forgot both? Just take my money. But sometimes, instead of that chaos, I see a purple button at the top of the payment options, and that button makes everything easier. I can just complete my checkout with a tap of one button. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Mattel and Heinz to brands just getting started. You can get started right away with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. See less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/POTC. Go to shopify.com/POTC. That's shopify.com/POTC.
Well, let's break it down and go into your 3 steps here. The first one, again, is Soothe. And cookbook style, you have several recipes to choose from. There are a whole bunch of them that you can try out, some breathing exercises and so on. And again, you have to pick the recipes that you like and maybe try some different ones and see which ones are going to be in your keeper pile, right? But there's one in particular I want to talk about, and I want to talk to you about it because it's one that is science-based. I have recommended it to people. It's in dialectical behavior therapy, and yet it is surprising to people. So I want to dive into that one in particular, which is chill out. It's your very first Soothe practice. So Kerry, let's dive into your steps. So your first step is Soothe. And in the book, you have several different practices. People can try them out, kind of cookbook style. Try a few different recipes and see which ones are going to be your keepers. Let's talk about why is Soothe the starting place? Why do you start there? Why is that step 1?
The reason we start with Soothe is because before we can do anything else, we need to be within our window of tolerance. We need to be able to slow our breathing, calm our heart rate, be in a physiological space where we are regulated enough that we're no longer in any kind of fight, flight, freeze, stress reaction. And instead, we are back in a kind of calm body space. Once we have a calm body space, then we are able to access all the power of our frontal lobe, and which includes the kind of tend and befriend network. It includes the ability to perspective take, but all of that is shut off from us until our bodies are calm and regulated.
Again, in the book, you have several different things people can try. You can read the book to find out more, but there's some breathing exercises and some different body-based things and several things that people can do step by step, why they work and how to do them. And there's one in particular I want to unpack with you, Kerry, because I think that it is very evidence-based. It's in a number of therapies. Dialectical behaviors therapy is where I first learned about it. And yet, whenever I've recommended it to a client or suggested it to someone, they are very surprised because it does not sound something intuitively that makes sense. And that is your very first practice in the cookbook, which is chill out. So tell us about chill out and why it's so effective for soothing.
So chill out is kind of a funny name for prompting the diver's reflex. So you put your forehead and specifically the space between your eyebrows, ideally into a large bowl of cold water, like ice water. And many people, when they hear me say that, will go, it does sound incredibly cold and uncomfortable. And what is happening is that we are prompting a really beautiful ancient survival mechanism, which is historically, over time, we have evolved to if we fall into really cold water, part of how our body protects us from and gives us a little bit longer for the members of our tribe to try and save us is it immediately decelerates both our breathing and our heart rate. And actually, I didn't know this till I was researching the book, many more organ functions are incredibly slowed down once our forehead is submerged in cold water. So we're kind of using that evolutionary short circuit, and it is very helpful for just immediately kind of washing us in this soothing, calming experience.
Anyone who has ever cold plunged can tell you that there is an immediate physiological reaction to that, right? The minute you plunge in, it's so fast.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend to someone who doesn't have a bowl of ice water handy? What else might you do to get that dive reflex going?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any running water near you, for example, there's a reason that a kind of colloquial calm down method is splash your face with water. You can do that. You can also use a wet washcloth against the back of your neck is a really nice cooling one. And then putting your feet in cold water. That is not diver's reflex, but sometimes that will give us a little more kind of soothing.
And then the next step is transcend, which is really about kind of perspective taking on the situation. And when you were describing the transcend step, you use your own experience with burnout and what that was like for you as an example. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was really work burnout, one of the places I was stuck for a while was feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed, and believing that the only way out was to do everything more. So work longer, sleep less, everything that I thought, it was basically work harder and faster. Try to use every efficiency hack that you can find on the internet. And really, that was just kind of digging me deeper, faster. And as I'm sure won't be a shock to anybody, it leads to being, I just got more and more brittle and angry and sad and exhausted. And the faster and harder I worked, the more separate I became from some really hard truths that were important for me to look at. Like, I'm in a job that would like me to exist as though I have no life outside a job. And I have a family and friends and hobbies that fulfill and enrich my life. And these two things I cannot be successful in all these areas of life at the same time because they're in some ways mutually exclusive. But when I was really committed to, I'm just going to do everything harder and faster, I couldn't see a broader perspective. I thought like the answer to my happiness was get to inbox 0. And I don't think either of us are surprised that that wasn't actually the answer.
Not only is that hard to attain, it will not be the magical cure to all of your problems, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what does transcend mean then? Like if, in that example, what would it look like to do that perspective taking that you talk about with this second skill?
Yeah. So, I would say take what is useful. Everyone who's listening, take what's useful and then discard whatever isn't useful. For me, it was useful to first soothe myself, create a little space and quiet, kind of get my body calm enough that I could look very realistically at what was happening. So being able to, and this for me was journaling on a quiet Sunday morning and talking to myself kind of through writing about it. It is a reality that you cannot be achieving each of the things you would like to right now. So if that, and can be a lot of sadness that comes with that. And if that clear seeing is true, then when the sadness comes up, having a lot of compassion. And I think usually before we make a change, there is grief and goodbye around acknowledging the thing you so desperately want may not be doable in exactly the form you hoped for at this moment in time. So a lot of compassion for the sadness and for the dream that I, would be an always available mother and an incredibly successful psychologist and a thoughtful, attuned friend. And we could just keep going on and on. But the reality is, in a moment in time, I could not do all those things in the way it felt really important to me to do. Humans all have this amazing power of perspective taking. One of my favorite not magic tricks of therapy is just saying to someone, what would the wise, calm you of 10 years from now say to you of today? We all have the ability to access these really kind of spacious, reflective perspectives. And just for people who are listening, the different aspects of what I was saying, clear seeing, compassion, perspective taking, this is all in the cookbook as well. The intention is not that any of us are just rattling off this kind of ladder of ideas off the top of our head.
Well, when I think of you, Kerry, and I've known you for quite a while now, I do think about compassion because you've done a lot of work in this space. And I think that's your vibe, right? So compassion is one of the skills you can work on for being able to transcend. What are a few suggestions you have? I know compassion can be really difficult for people, especially toward themselves, right? That can be a hard thing to do. So how might someone practice a little bit of compassion?
So I have two, what one of my teachers, Kelly McGonigal, once described as sneaky compassion practices. So one is, for many of us, it can feel challenging to practice self-compassion. So two things I have found that can be a little bit easier kind of pathway in. One is imagining little you. So an image of you when you were quite little. And a personal example of this is one of the things I've noticed across the last year with Start Here coming out is I'm noticing a lot of yearning to be a writer. I'm noticing a lot of fear, so much self-judgment, so much like I can, this year I've had moments where I've just been really tight and unkind to myself about the way I'm doing it wrong or the way soon they're going to find out that, I'm not a real writer. Soon they're going to discover that I tricked them, that this was a one-off. And you and I are both ACT practitioners, and we know that we hurt where we care. And I care so deeply about trying to be good at what I do and providing people with help. And you heard me kind of bring in both warm compassion as well as fierce compassion, which is such an incredible contribution that Kristen Neff has added to our understanding of both kind of tender compassion as well as protective compassion. So that is a place where I have found a lot of comfort being able to access self-compassion.
What a beautiful example. And you can see how that does help you sort of step out of whatever immediate problem you're having and just like zooming way out and thinking about it in that grander perspective of, this moment isn't forever. This will pass.
Yeah. And within the book, the script for self-compassion has 3 parts, which, W just did. An acknowledgement, this is hard. This is part of being human. And then some kind words of support. And in the book, we have this beautiful illustration of a climber about to climb up a mountain. And the handholds are the 3 parts of that script. So just another kind of little visual reminder. Because sometimes we all need a little kind of visual support.
Well, let's move on to the third step, which is move, which is all about those value-directed actions that you're going to take in response to this situation. What kind of guidance do you usually give overwhelmed people when it comes to this step?
So the guidance is pause, take a deep breath. What is your priority in this moment? This came up a lot for me during the holidays, as I'm sure it did for many, when there's so many competing demands on your time. And usually there are a lot of complications that can come with the holidays to make it even more stressful and overwhelming. Take a breath and say, all right, if I have one goal for this hour, how do I want to show up? Or what is the one thing? If there's only time and space for one thing, what is the one thing? And as a concrete example, in moments where I was, stressed out, Kerry was thinking, okay, well, you need to wrap all the presents and make the cookies and drop that thing off for your friend who's in chemo. And have you even thought about holiday cards? And you haven't responded to those 3 emails yet, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then being able to take a breath and said, okay, if there is one thing that's important today, and we all get to choose, right? We all get to choose what is the one thing. Is it communicating to my clients that they were given a thoughtful and clear response? Is it being fully present when my daughter shares that she's had an argument with a friend? It's just about soothe and then choose one priority, pick one thing to do in front of you.
I mean, we're back full circle to overwhelm, because I think that sometimes is really hard when you're overwhelmed. You just can't even pick which of the millions of things on your plate to focus on. And so just being intentional and pausing and then pick one and make a move.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. It kind of breaks it down in those moments of overwhelm. And in the book, you have so many different values exercises. I was hoping to talk to you about this, but I know that we are low on time here, so people will just have to read about it in the book, because you have a few more science-backed principles to add that can kind of help people through. You also offer some worksheets to help people reflect and to grow and learn, like a life review that you have at the end, and just some wonderful tools that I think people will find really helpful in moments of overwhelmed and beyond. I mean, it's just a terrific resource for people.
Thank you.
I live in an old house in a city with pollution, and I've been worried that the air quality is making it harder to breathe. I'm so glad I have an Air Doctor air purifier in my house now. The air in my house feels better and smells fresher. I'm sleeping better and wake up feeling like I can breathe easily. And now I don't have to worry about my family breathing dust and pollution all the time. Air Doctor's powerful 3-stage filtration captures extremely small particles, about 100 times smaller than what typical air purifiers can remove. It captures airborne contaminants you definitely don't want to be breathing in, like dust, pollen, mold spores, pet dander, wildfire smoke, bacteria, viruses, odors, smoke, ozone, and VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. It's whisper quiet while it's running, not loud like other air filters on the market, and its auto mode feature ensures optimal air 24/7. You'll get reminders to change your filter so you don't need to remember or guess when to do it. Air Doctor won Newsweek's Reader's Choice Award for Best Air Purifier. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code POTC to get up to $300 off today. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee plus a 3-year warranty, an $84 value free. Get this exclusive podcast-only offer now at airdoctorpro.com, airdoctorpro.com, using promo code POTC. If you're a therapist like me, listen up. If you're in private practice or a group practice or are thinking of starting one up, you should know about Simple Practice. Simple Practice is an all-in-one EHR that is HIPAA compliant, high-trust certified, and built specifically for therapists. I've been in private practice for about 7 years, and Simple Practice has been a lifesaver for me. It helps me streamline everything. I send each new client a link, and then Simple Practice is my portal for consent forms, billing, appointment reminders, even my telehealth video platform. It frees up admin time so I can focus on the important part, seeing my clients. And I'm not the only POTC co-host who uses it. Emily does too, and Jill uses it to manage her group practice. And if you're just starting out or growing your practice, there's also a credentialing service that takes the headache out of insurance enrollment, which will save you so much time and effort. Simple Practice is trusted by over 250,000 health and wellness professionals, and you can feel that in how thoughtfully it's built for our work. If you're ready to simplify the business side of your practice, now is the perfect time to try Simple Practice. Start with a 7-day free trial, then get 50% off your first 3 months. Just go to simplepractice.com to claim the offer. Again, that's simplepractice.com. Yeah. So, Kerry, tell us about the consultation that you're offering that's kind of a new part of your practice.
Yes. So I'm kind of expanding in the ways that I'm trying to support people this year. And I have a few openings for middle-aged women who are based in North America, professional mentoring and consultation services. So this is really intended for people who are in helping professions. They're feeling really overwhelmed. Maybe they're experiencing burnout or compassion fatigue and are looking for some kind of reflective support. I think the most important step would be anybody who is interested in that or in accessing more of my resources. My name is Kerry Makin-Byrd, MAKIN-BYRD, and I'm sure my website will be in the show notes. After Start Here was published, I got really excited about developing a much bigger resource around reflecting. And what I have found over the last decade of doing my own reflection is that kind of quarterly or monthly, real mini reflections can be as if not more useful. So for people who sign up for my mailing list, you can join us. We're calling it the Good Enough Year 2026. And there's a big workbook and a Google Doc, and you can just join us and on your own journey of reflection.
Okay, well, tons of terrific resources that you're offering people between your book and those offerings. So definitely check that out. And Kerry, thank you so much for joining us. It was really great talking to you today.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Kerry on Overwhelm. Certainly something that many of us have experienced and can relate to. And I'm here with Yael to talk about the episode. You've never felt overwhelmed before, have you, Yael? This is not a familiar concept.
Never. And it's
mother of three.
It's so funny because you've written a book about it. I've essentially written a book about it. Kerry's new book is about it. And you write what is most pressing in your own life too.
Right. I know. I wonder why we all write about this topic,
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So what are your thoughts, Yael, about the conversation I had with Kerry?
Well, first, I just wanted to say I love her voice. Her voice is so soothing. I could totally imagine her being the kind of therapist where you just step into the room and feel instantly calmer. I had so many thoughts, but let me sort of reduce down, let me subtract and say that one of the dominant thoughts that I had was thinking about the episode that I recorded with Leidy Klotz that we'll include in the show notes about subtraction and how the human brain systematically overlooks subtraction as a wise life design choice. And what his research shows is that when we are cognitively burdened, when we have a higher level of overwhelm, is when we're even more likely to consider subtracting. It also reminds me of an episode and a book that I did with the author Greg McKeown on essentialism, where he says that we often get lost in the trivial many and we lose sight of the essential few. And I think that's why her approach just resonates so strongly for me, which is that in a moment of feeling really overwhelmed, we just feel a lack of direction. We don't know what to do. And so we just keep adding because we're like, well, something must, if I add a new task or a new approach or a new piece of wisdom or a new expert that I can lean on, maybe I'll feel better. But the more just adds to the overwhelm. And so I love her approach of giving people a recipe with just a few options because it kind of helps you to, rather than kind of stay inside of the chaos, to settle down, subtract a little, and focus.
I think that's right. I've had that experience when I'm really overwhelmed and stressed where I really can't do good perspective taking. I'm grasping around for a solution and I'm so in the weeds that everything feels important. And so I think zooming out and just being really clear and just having that level of awareness and then simplifying things really helps a lot and is really hard to do in the moment. And I agree. It's helpful to have these step-by-step ideas for concrete things that you can do because the overwhelmed brain is chaotic.
Yes.
We need that kind of clarity, right?
We do. And that brings me to the other main thing that I was thinking a lot about, which is we need sometimes help to step away. And I think knowing who your people are, whoever, given the situation, there might be different people that you might look to for support, for connection, for guidance. And I have to say that the place my head goes is I think of you guys, our team at Psychologists Off the Clock, because we all really understand many of the life pressures that we encounter, all the demands of the podcast, but our other professional pursuits of family life. And so when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't know what to do, and I'm feeling just such chaos and lack of direction and just anxiety about it, one of the most helpful things that I do is I reach out to you guys. And sometimes it's for practical support. And, while I was in the thick of writing my next book, for a period of time, the team really took on a lot of my responsibilities so that I would be able to dedicate all of my resources to writing. But a lot of the time, it's about social support, of just not feeling so alone in it, of feeling validated and seen and cared about. And sometimes that is really important in a moment of overwhelm and can really help prevent burnout. I know that that's been the case for me.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Having that both practical and also emotional support is crucial. We know this. And sometimes, again, just like we were saying earlier, sometimes it's when you're so stressed and overwhelmed, it's hard to think of doing that. And then when you do, it's like knowing you're not alone and having people who can can kind of jump in there and help you out in whatever way you need. Just makes such a big difference.
Yeah. And sometimes the people in your life can say, you're getting stuck on the trivial many. Like none of this stuff really matters. And you're just too much in the thick of it to be able to see that clearly. And sometimes that's a really helpful corrective lens to be offered by somebody who cares about you.
That's right. That's right. All right, everybody. Well, thanks, Yael, for joining me. And thank you all for listening to today's episode.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock. You can now listen to our podcast ad-free by becoming a supporter on Patreon. You can link to Patreon on our website or go to patreon.com/offtheclocksite.
If you enjoy our podcast, you can help us out by leaving a review and sharing this episode with a friend or an enemy who would enjoy it.
You can get more psychology tips by subscribing to our fabulous newsletter on Substack. Or if you're still addicted to social media, find us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
We'd like to thank our rockstar production manager, Jadine Stout-Williams.
Now for the boring part. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for mental health treatment. If you're looking for mental health treatment, please visit the resources page of our website, offtheclockpsych.com.